Hey everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Iman. I make videos like this, talking about my experience in medical school. I go to St. George's University, and today in this video I'm gonna review St. George's University. St. George's University is a Caribbean medical school. I believe it's the biggest one by size and by evaluation, meaning like it's got the most students, and it's the biggest institution out of all the universities in the Caribbean. It's funny when I got there, just some random guy was standing in front of the university and was like, "Oh, this is the Harvard of the Caribbean." Kind of funny thing to say. I kind of broke it down to some categories that you can see here, and I'm gonna give it a rank out of, or I'm gonna give it a mark out of. Use this color out of 10 for each one. And yeah, okay, let's get started. Education quality. It's a tricky one to answer because I think medical schools in general, like the best way to study in medical school is not to use your lectures or use the material that the school gives you, no matter where you go to medical school. If you go to the best medical schools in the US and Canada, or if you go to literally the worst medical schools in the world, I think the best way to study is to use standardized resources that are out there. I think Amboss, UWorld, for just like questions, and Pathoma, Sketchy for like if you lack concepts, and just using Anki in conjunction with those to hammer things down. So it's a hard one to rank because it doesn't really matter. Like if your school is really bad at teaching you, you shouldn't be using like their teaching material anyways, in my opinion. I didn't use a lot of SGU's teaching material. I just did stuff on my own, and it worked. It was way more comfortable. The resources were more convenient, and it was just easier to use, and it was a more higher quality resource, right? And the resources I used was Pathoma for pathology, Sketchy Micro and Farm for Micro and Farm, and then using Anki to hammer those down. And then when I got to a decent point of feeling okay with the content, I just started doing questions. Do UWorld, do Amboss, both are good. UWorld has more questions. Amboss has a library that's attached to it that is like super useful. That being said, I'm gonna give it like a passing grade of like a 7 out of 10 to SGU. Just because I didn't think the teaching quality was per se that good. But it was like, I don't think it's as important as people believe it to be, considering how everything is online these days, and the best way to study is to use online resources anyways, right? So I still give it a passing grade, which I think they did what they needed, what a medical school needs to do. It costs a lot. For my Canadian friends, it costs about 3 to 4 times as much as what schools cost in Canada. It probably costs 150, like 50% more than what they cost in US when you're talking about the Caribbean. So let's say if they cost 200K in the US, they'll cost 300K in the Caribbean. I don't want to give exact figures because they change all the time. But the good thing about this is that since I'm Canadian, I wasn't able to come up with a big student loan, right? What the school did, they kind of like financed the tuition for me, and the schools in the States weren't willing to do that, as far as I've researched, right? So the costs were a lot, so that brings it down. But they did borrow it to me, and now that'd be at a interest rate that's a little bit higher than what you can get out of a student loan, but still I would say a reasonable interest rate. And if it wasn't for them borrowing the money, I would probably not be able to find an alternative. So I'm gonna give them, and also compared to the other Caribbean medical schools, the other ones, as far as I know, they don't do that. But SU is on the expensive side of the Caribbean medical school, so I'll still give it a 7 out of 10 because I still think because they borrow a lot, because they have that internal loan, because they're a bigger institution, it does help the ranking. And it makes it possible for a lot of people to get a medical education when they otherwise wouldn't be able to. Now, the next one is about living in Grenada. So I didn't live in Grenada for 2 years. I only lived there for 1 year because my first year of medical school was during COVID. But if you're going there, you'd have to live in Grenada for 2 years or more if you're doing pre-med there. And it's really fun on one hand, but there's certain conveniences that you won't have. You won't have the certain type of snack you want. It's gonna be always hot there, but you're always gonna have a beautiful beach. In a 10-minute drive next to you. The food isn't as great. A lot of people complain about eating out and getting sick, stuff like that. But overall, I think living in Grenada, I'm from Canada again. So living in the tropics with the sunny beach next to me all the time was pretty nice compared to, being in Canada that half of the year is raining, the other half is kind of freezing, and you have like 2 months of summer. That's nice, but it's only 2 months out of 12 months. And whereas in Grenada, it was literally 12, well, I would say 11 months a year. You have like nice sunny days, a little too warm, but sometimes it's a little rainy. I would say Grenada life like 9 out of 10. The only thing is some of the locals can be like unfriendly or whatever. You gotta find the type of people you wanna kind of hang out with. Not everybody's gonna be friendly, but a lot of people are friendly, right? Length of education. I think this is the most important thing that Caribbean medical schools have going for them, is that you don't have to wait to get into a Caribbean medical school most of the time. Almost 100% of the time, right? Now, 1 year, that 2 years you're saving, you're not getting that master's program, you're not, doing that research that you're not necessarily passionate about, or you don't necessarily want to do it, you're doing it to get into medical school. That 1 to 2 years that you're going to save is going to, probably lead to a lot of money if you do decide to work as a physician then later on in your life. Does that make sense? So let's say instead of entering medical school at like 24 or whatever, if you start medical school at 26, you've lost those 2 years, and those 2 years you can work as a physician. And if you think in your mind, like average income of physician is $250K, for example, and then for 2 years, so it has saved you $500,000, right? If you want to think of it that way. So, and even better, if you're right out of high school, you can probably get the entire MD degree for 6 years, compared to like 7 or 8 years that it would cost you, or more, that it would cost you in the US and Canada. So those years saved are really money saved, because it's money that you will be making otherwise. You'll be making earlier if you go to the Caribbean versus if you not go to the Caribbean, right? So I think Caribbean schools, like as a business, I think they should play into this strength more, play into like advertise this more. Kind of looks weird, and put more focus on it. Like if you want to be a doctor 100%, and it's possible for you to go to the Caribbean, I would go to the Caribbean right after high school, right? I've thought about it, and if I was to repeat it again, I would go to Caribbean right after high school. I would have become a doctor by like 2 years ago or something like that. I would have saved a lot of time. But I mean, it will be 4 years of living in Grenada instead of 2 years. You gotta have that in mind. Okay, maybe 5 years. So when I say 2 years, you gotta live in Grenada. That's a minimum. Some people fail a term and they end up living there for 2 years and a half. Some people fail 2 terms. They end up living 3 years. And some people fail more than that and they end up living there 3 years and not being an MD. So, that's I guess the part I'm kind of omitting by saying this is the attrition rates are really high, and what that means is if 100 people start term 1 of year 1, those 100 people aren't going to make it to term 5 of year 2, right? Something about 40 to 50% of them will leave. But the thing is, having gone to the Caribbean, a lot of them do belong in medical school, but some of them don't belong in medical school. Some of them have other things that are more important to them. They're like coming to Grenada to party. They're not studying like a medical student. They kind of never sat down with themselves and, kind of accepted the fact that they have to be studying really hard for the next however many years. So from the people who don't make it to, third year, some of those people really like didn't try as hard. Some of them have though. So it's important to not negate their experience. But I think overall, if you come to the Caribbean, if you study hard, you should be fine. And but for some people, something goes wrong, all of a sudden mental health issues. What are you going to do now? Classmates, 10 out of 10. I think I met the best people in Grenada. They're mostly Canadians and U.S. citizens, so the same kind of people that I was next to, like in Canada, anyways. But it's like it's different meeting them in like a island in Caribbean, and you're like in this experience together. But I think I met the best type of people. Facilities. So the only important facilities that I have in my mind, like as a medical student, is that does the university have somewhere quiet to study? Okay. Does it have high-speed internet? Because if you have those two things, you can learn everything by yourself. And the answer to that is kind of to both of them for SGU. Fast internet, sometimes. It really annoyed me. It got disconnected. For some people, it worked wonderfully. For some people, the Wi-Fi didn't work at all. They had to get an Ethernet cable, and that was a pain in the ass, right? Quiet areas. The thing is, the quiet exam venues are also used. The quiet like study venues are also used by exams. So you get kicked out a couple times a week out of your studying spot because there's an exam for, I don't know, these other like terms going on, right? So that was particularly annoying. The other thing is they use the study areas, the quiet study areas for exams, and the non-quiet study areas for like small group assignments and stuff like that. So sometimes you might get kicked out of those. Overall, I would still give it a passing grade of 7 out of 10. But you know, like actually, I'm gonna make a disclaimer. I'm not gonna make a 5 out of 10 anything lower than 5 out of 10 in this video. So like know your zero as 5 out of 10. So if I'm giving a 7 out of 10, that's like barely passing, right? Research, actually. I think research, they did a good job of it because I wasn't involved in research. I personally think doing a high step score is way more impressive than like 5 or 6 studies, right? Now, if you want to go into something super competitive, you need both. But if you were to choose between like having a high step score and research, I would choose having a high step score. Also, I think what's more important for being a good doctor is a better foundation of everything, aka like a good step score than like being an expert on a very particular field. It all depends on what exactly you want to do in your future, but I think I chose to put all my eggs in the basket of I want to get better at answering questions, getting higher estimates on step 1, and then hopefully translating that next year to getting a high step 2 score. But research, for people who wanted to get involved, all they needed to do was to send an email, be like, I want to get involved in this research or whatever. They would get their name in publications. Were they good journals? No. Were they like good research? No. But they got their name like quite easily. What I experienced in undergrad is that like no matter how hard I tried to reach out to like these PIs, a lot of them just like ignored basically my emails, or like when I talked to them or whatever, or you needed to like volunteer or work for them for like 3 years to like do anything, and then like basically needed to do a master's program with them. Here, people were way more receptive to you wanting to be a part of the research project, but most of the research projects were like crappy, like made up, like, but you would, I didn't think it would be worth my time, so I didn't do it. But if you wanted to get a bunch of publications going on, I think the research at SGU would be able to help you. So I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Overall, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think it got the job done, right? And I think that's the most important thing about a medical school, to get the job done. The rest, I think a lot of it can be mitigated by your own like work habits. And I think like even if you go into the fantastic medical school, the best in the world, you still need to get like 85% of things done by yourself. You need to figure out how to study well. You need to figure out what resources you're going to use, etc., etc. So I think that the whole core of the thing is, you know, how well you study, right? And not a lot the school can do to help you, honestly. They can try, but to my experience, the more trying they did, like the more they got into my business. Like really, you gotta do it so long, do it so much, so intensely to get good at studying. That's I think the key. All right, I'm gonna end this video. I got a little excited throughout this video. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. I'm gonna make more videos. Goodbye.